Did you know that Ron DeSantis supports slavery? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, Ron DeSantis wants the school children in Florida to learn that slavery was a good thing. You learned all kinds of cool skills from slavery. Now, let's stop right there a minute. For all of you who are rational, does that make any sense to you? Does that sound like Ron DeSantis to you? See, Democrats can never actually run against their opponents. They have to lie about them and try and destroy them. Ron DeSantis doesn't believe slavery was a good thing. They had a committee of scholars who put together a very thorough course on slavery, among other things, and led by African Americans, including 2 African Americans in particular. They didn't say that slavery was a good thing. What they said was, and essentially, as horrific as it was and as horrific as it is, people learned some skills that they were able to use later in life. That is what they're saying now is a pro-slavery statement by DeSantis and his government. There's over 190 bullets in this curriculum. I went through a number of them. It is the most thorough discussion of slavery I've ever seen. It doesn't make the United States look good. It's not pro-slavery. It doesn't play down slavery. Quite the contrary. It's in your face. It's very blunt. Here is Scott Jennings, CNN senior political commentator on CNN yesterday. Cut 15, go.
Well, it's amazing to me that how little Kamala Harris apparently has to do, that she can read something on Twitter one day and be on an airplane the next to make something literally out of nothing. This is a completely made-up deal. I looked at the standards. I even looked at an analysis of the standards in every instance where the word slavery or slave was used. I even read the statement of the African-American scholars that wrote the standards, not Ron DeSantis, but the scholars. Everybody involved in this says this is completely a fabricated issue. And yet, look how quickly Kamala Harris jumped on it. So the fact that this is her best moment, a fabricated matter, is pretty ridiculous in my opinion.
Because the Democrat Party cannot survive without racism. Anti-black racism through most of its history, anti-white racism today, and then they project onto Republicans what they and their party did to the country. And I write about this extensively in my new book. So Eugene Robinson, who did not look at the standards, he's talking about normalizing a unique horror of slavery in Florida's curriculum, and a Navarro who is a psychopath in 2 languages. She's on the View. She clearly didn't look at all the standards. She didn't look at anything. And she's trashing, screaming at DeSantis for whitewashing slavery. He did no such thing. And there are others. Of course, Kamala Harris trying to exploit it. Because Kamala Harris doesn't have anything. Certainly nothing substantive. And they turn to Kamala Harris, or maybe she turned to herself to try and exploit this, which is outrageous. So Florida has not done what they say Florida did. Ron DeSantis didn't write the standards. He appointed the people. There's nothing wrong with the standards if you go through and look at all of them, including this one of 192. And so this is a completely phony issue that they're trying to use to upset black Americans in this country to create a permanent smear on DeSantis. So this is what everybody thinks about when they hear his name. And this is what the Democrat Party does. every fascistic and Marxist regime to ever exist on the face of the earth did what the Democrat Party has done. And so they've learned from them. Controlling the language, controlling the thought process. That's what this is about. Here she is, as an example. Cut 14. Go.
Extremists pass book bans to prevent them from learning our true history. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2023. And while they do this, check it out. They push forward revisionist history. Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
She's a nut. She's a race baiter. And I think enough of this country now has embraced race baiting that it's a problem. Everything she said is a lie. Was she fact-checked? By the New York Times or the Washington Post? Did they fact-check her? Did they go in and look at all the standards? Including this one? And so they insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it? This is how she hopes to get votes? First of all, Harris, it's your party that enslaved black people. It's my party that led a civil war to free them. And it's my Republican presidents, Lincoln, Grant, among others, who did exactly that. And it's your party, for 100 years after the end of the Civil War, whether it's Plessy versus Ferguson, segregation, separate but equal is equal, it's your party that prevented black people from voting in the South with a variety of obstacles created. Your party did that. My party opposed it. 1957, it was our president, Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, who passed the 1957 Civil Rights Act. And it was your guy, Lyndon Johnson, who watered it down. In 1960, another Civil Rights Act passed, pushed by Eisenhower as well. Your guys watered down that one too. Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson wanted to take credit for being a civil rights leader while he was leading the Southerners in the Senate to water down these bills. 1964, the Civil Rights Act. Over 80% of the Republicans in the House and the Senate voted for it. 69% of the Democrats in the Senate voted for it. And a percentage smaller than the Republicans voted for it in the House. Same with the 1965 Civil Rights Act. It's your party that took the Grand Kegel of West Virginia, Bob Byrd, and made him the leader of your party in the Senate. Minority leader and majority leader. It's your president, Joe Biden, the man under whom you serve. The man to whom you are vice president of the United States, who opposed integrating our public school system with blacks and whites, calling it a jungle for his children. I don't even have to go back 100 years. Your man did that. And you told us that so eloquently during the debates, but you're such a hack, you're such a power-hungry nothing, that when they offered you vice president, you could barely control yourself. That's the truth. They don't teach that in school, Anna Navarro, you moron. They don't teach that in school, do they, Gene Robinson, you clown? They don't teach any of that in our schools, do they? It was a Democrat who was president of the Confederacy, surrounded by Democrat generals. Was a Democrat general during the Confederacy who, after the Civil War, formed the Ku Klux Klan. My Republican president Ulysses S. Grant sent the United States Army into the South to destroy the Klan and almost did. Your party, the Democrats, in the midterm elections took the House and cut off funding for the Army to go down south and finish the job. Anybody know that? Now you know it. How do you like me teaching history, Anna and Kamala? I'm not done. I'm not done. It's the Democrat Party that supported lynchings, including in their platforms. It's Franklin Roosevelt who had a bill put on his desk, a bipartisan bill, a federal law to outlaw lynching. He refused to sign it. That's your party. How about that history? And it was Joe Louis who backed Wendell Willkie for president, a Republican, against Franklin Roosevelt. And when he was asked why, he said, because Roosevelt won't stop lynching in this country, he refused to sign that bill. It was your party in 1936 that invited all the white members of the Olympic class to the White House, except one. A black man, you may have heard of him, Jesse Owens. Owens was asked about this in his biography, and he said, Hitler didn't snub me. I didn't even see Hitler. Roosevelt snubbed me. He never talked to me. And he invited everyone to the White House, but he didn't invite me. This is the Democrat Party. That and 100 more facts that you'll find. And the Democrat Party hates America. You want to go further, Mr. Producer? Is this helping? Eugenics was something the so-called progressives were pushing and pushing hard. Why? Because these Marxists believe in the perfection of society through experts. But society could never be as perfect as the progressives wanted as long as there were people, they believed, who were inferior in positions that they didn't think they should be in. You want a more perfect society? You got to clean up the population. Woodrow Wilson was not alone in this regard, but he was the president. And he and his fellow Democrats, Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood, supported eugenics to use against, quote, idiots, other people, and blacks. Want to hear more? When he was president of Princeton University, he bragged that not a single black was admitted to Princeton when he was president of Princeton. You want to hear more? The Republicans before Woodrow Wilson, Theodore Roosevelt, Howard Taft, desegregated the federal government, desegregated the military. You know who resegregated them? A Democrat, Woodrow Wilson. Anybody been taught this? Woodrow Wilson blocked blacks from getting senior positions in the federal government. In fact, he forced most of them out. And any black person who wanted a position in the civil service, for the first time ever, photographs were required to be presented along with resumes. Gee, I wonder why. Oh, I got 1 million of them. But not right now.